I know I usually don't make this type of video, but I have been thinking a lot about Kuro Games as a company as of late due to two main events. First of all, the WutheringWaves anniversary rewards, and the second thing being the fact that the Punishing Grey Raven and Devil May Cry collab seems to be absolute peak cinema. So that caused me to think, does Kuro Games just prefer Punishing Grey Raven? Or is there some other factor at play here? Well, that's what this video is about. And I think that the differences between the games all comes down to one thing, which is scale. But first, I need to talk a bit more about the individual aspects before I can truly explain why I think this. First of all, I wanted to talk about how each game treats banners and FOMO. FOMO is something that all gacha games are based upon. It is the #1 principle that gets people to spend money on the game. At least that's the case in modern gacha games like Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, and of course Wuthering Waves. But Punishing Grey Raven takes this ideology and really just messes around with it, because the way banners and fear of missing out are treated in that game are incredibly different from the status quo. You see, Wuthering Waves copied the Hoyoverse formula, as I like to call it. Banners last 3 weeks. We have 2 phases per patch, with the patch lasting 6 weeks. We have 160 currency per pull, and we have a pity of around 80 or 90, depends on the game, with a 50-50 system. However, Punishing Grey Raven looks at this mechanic and says, what if we just didn't? You see, when a new character comes out, they will be running throughout the entire update, having a pity of 60 with no 50-50. When you pull for the character and you get an S rank, it is the one you are pulling for on the banner, at least when it comes to limited characters. When we're talking about reruns, there will be 3 reruns at any given time, with a 70% chance to get the character you pulled for, with a 15% chance of getting one of the other characters that are on the rerun banners. These rates are obviously way better than the modern gacha games. 60 pity is lower, there is no chance when it comes to new characters, and where there is a chance, aka on the reruns, the chance is much higher to get the character you want. So where's the FOMO here? Even if you want to get multiple characters that are running around at the same time, not only does the game blurt out so much currency you can just pull for both anyway, but even if you're less active, every single character goes to the standard banner after 2 patches. And it does not mean they're suddenly bad, they will still be meta giants. And every couple of months, you're able to guarantee 1 S rank to get from the standard banner. Like, literally, you can just pick which one you want, which is incredibly helpful if you're trying to get 2 characters that are running around the same time, but you can only choose one of them. Additionally, Kuro just spits out free S rank characters. For example, in the upcoming PGR update, we are getting Lilith Demonessa for free, who is a meta Dark Team character, as well as 2 older characters for completely free, being Alpha Crimson Weave, as well as 21 Feral Scent, both of which still being meta characters in the current Lightning team. So overall, Punishing Grey Raven just has way less FOMO. You can pull basically every S rank, and even if you're trying to get their signature weapons, those are also permanently available, and the pity is 30. So overall, FOMO in PGR feels like it just doesn't exist at times. But why is this? Would a game that has less players than Wuthering Waves not need more FOMO in order to generate more money? Well, that's not really how it works with these smaller games. Smaller gacha games have to be more generous because they need to keep the small player base they have. And if they attract new players, they need those new players to stay. So ultimately, while the PGR fanbase is treated better when it comes to banners, there's a reason for this. It's not just because Kuro likes PGR more, it is just business. Which moves me to my second point, which is meta and power creep. Now I want to start this section off by saying that Wuthering Waves' meta is incredibly balanced so far. It is one of the best metas I've seen in a gacha game that I have played, being better than Genshin's meta, better than Zenless' meta, better than Star Rail's, obviously the bar is in hell, and power creep is incredibly manageable, especially when we look at the HP inflation of things like Tower of Adversity. with the overall HP of Tower having increased by less than 15% over an entire year. But PGR manages to look at that and still spin it on its head in a more generous way. You see, in PGR, every single new character is an upgrade for an existing team, except for collab characters, which are made worse than the current meta characters specifically to prevent FOMO. However, that's not my point right now. You see, the current banner characters are Lucia Pyroth and Nanami Startrail, both of them being the new best fire DPS and lightning DPS in the game respectively. But hey, Nanami is not an attacker type character, she's a tank. Well, that's because a lot of the time in PGR, the newest character of a specific element is instantly also good enough to be a DPS, usually even just straight up better than the attacker characters in the same element. So if you're a new player to PGR and there is a support on the banner, you can pull that support and use them as a DPS. You don't even need to get their full teams to start playing endgame. For example, in Warzone, if you just have one good character of the element, they can carry you so insanely hard that you're just going to get a good score anyway. And now you're probably wondering, if every single character is meta, doesn't that just mean power creep is rampant? Well, not really, because PGR has enough variety in its characters and teams that characters can be incredibly valuable for a very long time. For example, Live Imperia came out a long time ago, like several years, but thanks to character release schedule, as well as gaining more buffs after her release, she is to this day still the best fire type amplifier in the global server. And while there is a new fire amplifier in the CN server currently, Live Imperia has still managed to survive meta for years. So power creep in this game is incredibly slow. But yet again, I feel like this is more so because punishing Grey Raven is just a smaller game. If there was a lot of power creep, people would become agitated at the game, because they would no longer be able to play their favorite characters. And while it does eventually happen that someone's favorite character gets power crept, they will still be more than good enough to clear the content. Because in punishing Grey Raven, the way you get your currency and your rewards is not by performing in endgame content, it's simply just by participating in it. You can still play your favorite characters. Because if you just couldn't play your favorite characters anymore, a lot of people would become agitated and quit the game, which Kuro simply cannot allow given the fact that the player base is already small. Next up, there is events. Events are a core part of the gacha experience, so obviously they're something that we're gonna have to talk about. But the main reason I want to mention events is because the events in the Devil May Cry collab for PGR look absolutely insane. I don't fully understand the details of it, but they managed to replicate the style system from Devil May Cry and put it into their game. It really looks like they're going all out with this event. Meanwhile, in Wuthering Waves, we don't really see events that go this much into detail. Sure, they've made style systems before and stuff like that, but never does it truly go as deep as this event for the Devil May Cry collab. They even created an entirely new boss for this event, being Virgil. They literally took Virgil from Devil May Cry 5, like the exact boss, and put him into PGR. You don't see that kind of effort from Kuro Games when it comes to Wuthering Waves. Well, at least, that's what we think. You see, Wuthering Waves is simply just a way larger game. Like, in every single way. It has a massive open world, and its characters have to be able to interact with this open world, and overall, WuWa is just a way bigger game, which means a lot of extra resources have to go towards the very simple act of just making the base functions work. Whereas with PGR, because you're almost always confined to small spaces, they just have more time and more resources to go in depth on things like events. So yet again, it's not necessarily that Kuro treats PGR better. It's just that they have the resources to make better events. And then the final point I wanted to discuss is story. Now, I understand that story is incredibly subjective, This is just a fact that we all have to understand. Some people are going to prefer one story, other people are going to prefer another story. However, this is more about the effort that Kuro Games puts into the story. And I'm going to have to be completely honest here, while I prefer the writing in Punishing Gray Raven, Wuthering Waves' story gets infinitely more resources than PGR's does. Have you ever seen a PGR quest being played? It's literally just PNGs on a screen with unvoiced dialogue. The story, while the writing is good, they are not putting resources into that, man. And sure, PGR has cutscenes, but WuWa has more cutscenes. So it is undeniable that Wuthering Waves simply gets more attention when we're talking about story content. However, one thing I do want to point out about story content is that the directions for the story in PGR and WuWa are very different. PGR is supposed to be this grand narrative about the same group of characters developing over years worth of stories, whereas in WuWa, it's way more about the world and the characters reacting to what's happening within the world around them. So one of them focuses on a small amount of characters getting quality development, while the other one focuses on a quantity of characters and simply interacting with these characters. More of their development comes in their companion quests. However, it's still pretty surface level compared to the development characters get in PGR. So now that I've gone over each section, it's time to fully comprehend why I believe everything has to do with scale. Simply, WuWa is a bigger game. It has bigger goals, bigger aspirations, a bigger fan base, and ultimately tried to be mainstream. It looked at Genshin Impact's success and said, I want a cut of that. So they took the Hoyo model, they took the currency from Hoyo, they took the banner schedules of Hoyo, they took the banner mechanics of Hoyo. So it's undeniable that Kuro Games tries to take inspiration from Hoyoverse. And while they improve upon what they do, it's still the same at its core. Meanwhile, Punishing Gray Raven is way closer to the gacha games with smaller communities on the market, and it's only getting attention now because not only is Wuthering Waves very big, Devil May Cry is also massive. A lot of PGR's fanbase simply comes from accidentally interacting with Punishing Gray Raven, and not because they actually had any real interest in PGR on its own. And thus, when PGR gets a new player, they really have to put in the effort to keep them there. But that's just my opinion. What do you think of this topic? Do you believe Kuro will go closer to the PGR route going forward, or do you think they're gonna try their best to copy the Genshin agenda? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, if you have any questions, you can join my Discord. I'm pretty active in there, so if you ask a question there, there's a pretty good chance I'll respond. Additionally, I'm going to be streaming the Wuthering Waves 2.3 update live tomorrow. You'll be able to see the scheduled stream on my channel when you open it. And I hope you'll be there. But that'll be it from me. Peace.